getting hot out here. Something's going on.
Hey, it's Jonathan McHugh. We're back here at Loyola University for another edition of Fridays off ... Beat. Get it? It's Friday, and we're hosting an amazing talent who has a large connective tissue to Loyola University. Please say hi to Mia Borders.
Hello.
Hello. So Mia Borders, you have some history here at Loyola. Talk about that to start.
Yeah, I am a class of 2010 alumni from the English department, interestingly enough. When I was a student here, there was still only just jazz and classical. And I did a lot of classical stuff in high school. So last minute decision post-Katrina to stay in New Orleans. I got an English lit degree.
So Loyola got you, but
Yeah,
that wasn't
hooked
the
me.
original intention. Like during high school, you had a different tact of career path, and then obviously Katrina, as did many people, it changed their lives in a different way. Talk about that if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, 4 years of boarding school in Connecticut was sort of, my plan was to go to film school. And so that was what I was working towards for all 4 of those years. Music was always on the side. You know, I was still performing in that regard, but filmmaking was my number one passion at that point. I graduated the spring before Katrina. I was going to take a gap year anyway, just because boarding school is a lot. And so I needed, just a reset. And then Katrina hit, so I was going to take a gap year one way or the other, apparently. And then I moved back to New Orleans in February after the storm, started up a band with some friends, got a little bit of traction. By the time the next fall rolled around, leaving and going to Savannah didn't seem like it was the move at the time, and Loyola was just throwing money at people trying to get enrollment numbers up. So I got hooked in.
And so the addiction of the music, the attraction of the music, the fact that you got some traction really kept you here. And obviously going to school here makes sense if you're here, but it's fascinating how those things happen. Like had you not got that traction, you'd be in film school and you'd be a filmmaker now, and who knows what you'd be doing, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about it?
I do. I think about it all the time. I wonder what that alternate timeline looks like. Am I at the same sort of level in that world, or am I, Ava DuVernay or something in an alternate timeline?
It's interesting how to think about what it would be.
Yeah.
And so, the passion for music. Did you grow up playing music instruments?
Yes, I grew up mostly singing and dancing as a young kid. I always wanted to play guitar. My grandmother was strangely opposed to it.
Did your grandmother bring you up?
Yeah, she did. She raised me. I was raised by my dad's mom here in New Orleans, and she put me in piano lessons when I was young. I wasn't crazy about it. I also wasn't crazy
As grandmothers will do.
I mean, she had an idea of what she wanted me to be if I was going to be a musician, and it was very much, in the church, buttoned up, or classical type stuff, and so guitar just didn't really fit into her vision. But I stuck with piano long enough, and then I finally convinced my dad to get me a guitar from the pawn shop, which was brutal on my hands. It was the worst guitar. But he'd been burned by my brother. He bought him a violin, and then he played it for like 2 weeks or something. So he was like, "You're not going to fool me."
Right.
But I stuck with that really crappy guitar for a couple years, and then my grandmother finally switched me over to guitar lessons. So.
And that started it.
Yeah, I was about 10, and then just been playing ever since.
And did you get to play much in high school?
In high school, I did. Again, it was mostly singing. I was in the choir. I was in an a cappella group. So the guitar stuff, I was too scared to try out for jazz ensemble, just because I didn't feel up to par. And so I was just playing on the side, and we had something called Coffee House, where people would get up and sing their songs, and it was a very friendly, open environment. And so that was an easier way to sort of ease my way into it. I had a lot of stage fright.
Really?
Especially with my original stuff. Yeah. So it was
But you got over that?
I got over it, I guess.
And so back to the connective tissue at Loyola. So
Yep.
then years later, you come back, you're here and you're establishing your music career, but you also take time to teach. Talk about the 5 years you spent teaching at Loyola.
Yeah, well, I think actually it was 2015 or 16. I can't remember. I was brought in for a forum about women in the music industry. And then John Snyder, God love him, who, when I was a student at Loyola, I took all my electives in music business. So I knew, the faculty, and John Snyder said, you should really be teaching. I was like, I don't think so.
He roped you in.
He roped me in. I said no, maybe 3 times. Again, I just didn't feel qualified. I don't have a classically trained musical education. I don't really read music like talking about it. And so I didn't feel like I was in any position to teach anybody anything. But it turned out to be a really great fit. And I was here for 5 years, started with 1 ensemble, then moved up to 2, and then got the singer-songwriter ensemble as well. It was very, very fulfilling. It's stressful. Especially just because I tend to carry the emotions of others. And so when I'm listening to 10 to 14 really depressing songs every week, it gets a little rough.
And I would think that would cut into your ability to create and the writing process, which is so deep diving that you have to kind of shut everything out. Was that not balanceable for you in a way?
It became less balanceable, especially post-pandemic. Just my head was in too many places at once. And I knew that something needed to change. Either I was going to go all the way into academia, or I was going to, get back on the road and start writing again. And, Loyola's not going anywhere, so.
Right.
I figured I'd give music a shot again.
Yeah, so you've done a lot of great festivals, both local and national. How do you find those gigs? Do you have someone that helps you book, or do you kind of run everything on point yourself?
Right now, it's just me. I hire out every once in a while. I'll have some people send out emails for me or aggregate a list of festivals. And then you just sort of cast a wide net and see who gets back to you. It's very much about staying at the top of people's inboxes, which is, you know how that goes. It's annoying and you feel like you're annoying.
Right.
But you just got to keep doing it.
And back to the balanceability of it all, you are also a business person. You have Third Coast Entertainment, which is a booking and promotion and marketing company, but yet you'll still do gigs, you'll still tour. And one of the things we teach here at Loyola is the ability to do both. You have to do a bunch of different things to make a living. If you choose music as a profession,
absolutely,
the aspect of being close to the music business, to be able to work somehow in the music business and to perform and to write and to do school is a lot. What's your advice for these things, and how do you balance it and segment your day, if you will, to say, hey, I'm going to write today, but also I need to book the show, and also I'm trying to pitch another thing, and I got to make a deck to pitch my services of my company, Third Coast Entertainment. Talk about that balance.
Yeah, I mean, Third Coast was born just because like you said, I've played a lot of festivals. More often than not, the people running those festivals don't look like me. And so it became more and more apparent that I needed to be more involved in that side of things, and be less of the token woman on the bill, or the token black person on the bill, or the token queer person on the bill. And so I wanted to be able to start my own festivals, and book a bunch of brown people and a bunch of women and a bunch of queer people who are so often overlooked, just because it's repeated that there's not enough room at the table for everybody. I don't believe that, and so I just started building my own tables.
It's cool.
Which I also do.
Over the last number of years, I would think that's gotten better.
Yeah.
Maybe it's never going to be as great as it could be.
Sure.
And should be, but how have you seen it got better out there in the world?
I mean, I've been really pleasantly surprised by the reception that Third Coast Entertainment has gotten from the city and from the organizations and venues that we worked with. It's been really nice to have other artists say, man, I appreciate what you're doing. I see what you're doing, and it's not unnoticed. It's valued, the work that you're doing. And then we have a nonprofit partner, the Borders Foundation. So I spent a lot of time doing grant applications to put on these events and stuff. But we've gotten, a lot of donations through Borders Foundation that helps promote these events and pay these musicians.
Yeah, 2 events I came to this year and participated a little bit was the Black Americana Fest, which I thought was kind of cool that hadn't been recognized as much as it should, and they had a great turnout.
They did a great job with that. I was just happy to be a performer there.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful.
So those are great when things can come out of nowhere and start and build, and then what happens next year,
Yeah,
and
when
then
you put Black women in charge.
It's just going to happen.
It's going to pop.
And then NOLA by NOLA, you booked that show. We did a show for voter registration with a number of different universities. Talk about organizing shows like that, and also the ability to perform at them.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works out that I'm a good fit for the event. I've put on a couple of Pride Fests. I've performed at those. Sometimes I'm not the best artist for the event that I'm putting on, and that's also very important to recognize. So it's good to just be able to, get my friends gigs and stuff. But I love that side of the business too. Like, I love time organization. I love a nice, tidy spreadsheet. I love collecting 1099s and then, sending out payments.
A lot of musicians don't. So
no, that's
it's really
the grunt
a unique
work.
Thing.
That's the grunt work that takes up more of my day than people would expect. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of admin. You have to really want to do it. But it became necessary because I wasn't getting the gigs that I thought I should be getting. So.
But it's also building a business, and like you said, helping others is obviously super important in what we do in the karma of life. So by helping to create opportunities for other people, that's the best karma you could put out there in the world, right?
I hope so, yeah.
That's great. So speaking of good karma, something recently happened good to you with the Prize Fest in Shreveport. Talk about that organization, what that is, and what you had to do to get the prize.
Yeah, it's called Prize Fest. There is an attached conference called Music Prize Con that had some industry panelists talking about, the state of the music business and streaming and AI and all that stuff. So that was, that in and of itself was worth it to make the trip. They have 4 prizes that they give away: food, comedy, film, and then music. I competed in the music prize. We had a 20-minute set, and I think that, maybe 15 years ago, that would have freaked me out. 20 minutes, oh my God, I've got to say everything in 20 minutes. But I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and so...
Stage fright's gone?
Stage fright, for the most part, is pretty much gone. Thanks to therapy and medication and just realizing that the worst can happen on stage and it's not the end of the world.
Right.
I've literally thrown up on stage. I've passed out on stage.
Wow.
It's not the end of my career.
Right.
I'm still
Keep going.
here. So
get up and do the next gig.
Get up and do the next song. And so, yeah, we went out there. My drummer, Wayne Moreau, my bassist, Jesse Morrow, my background vocalist, Kate Duncan. I believe you know her as well.
Director of this program at Loyola University.
Boss
and
lady.
A heck of a background vocalist, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah, we went up there and we won $10,000.
It's incredible.
It was a lot of fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And how many artists did you have to compete against to get the prize?
There were over 1,000 entrants.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
Yeah, and then they whittled it down. The people who came to the conference, I think there were 11 of us.
So 11 was the competition.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. We made some good connections with industry people and other artists. I hadn't been to Shreveport in a long time. I think the last time I played there was maybe 7 years ago or something. Yeah, so it was a great experience all the way around. And I got one of those big checks with my name on it.
Oh, they
That's
had
like
that thing?
weird.
They did like that?
Oh yeah, that's
That's
that weird
cool.
bucket list stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
Where you're like, I never knew I wanted this.
Reader's
but
Digest
it's
check.
Amazing.
Give it to me.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with it though. It's very
Well,
large.
speaking of know what to do with it, what do you know, it's a nice thing to do and you could just spend it and live off life, or, because life gets expensive. But how have you earmarked like the ability, how you want to try to spend that money?
European tour. Flights have always been the impediment. I have a very strong streaming base in Europe. I always have. And so I really want to be able to bring my music to those crowds directly, and show my appreciation for their support directly. And so this prize money really, helps alleviate the stress of us getting there, because we
Right.
can get the gigs. We got to get there.
Right. And would you book those gigs yourself, or would you try to find an international booking agency to help?
I'm working with an international booking agency.
Oh, great.
So we're setting up hopefully Germany and Spain. And then I've got some people up in Norway and Sweden and Finland as well. So it might be a couple of trips.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Glad I got my
international
passport
touring.
renewed.
We did a study abroad this semester and spent some time in Europe with students and watching them for the first time, watch World Cup in England, Euro Cup, I should say. Just the culture is so important to go out there and feel it. Like you
Yeah.
get stuck in your New Orleans bubble, which is an amazing bubble to be in. But just getting overseas, I would think, for your music, it helps to expand and you expand your base.
Absolutely.
So let's talk music. So you put out a record, Firewalker.
Yep.
Firewalker, he don't touch my bones.
What was the journey of that record coming out there?
Well, the song Firewalker, I actually wrote the lyrics for George Porter back in 2017. And it was for his trio record, but then that wound up getting pushed for the full band record, Crying for Hope, which came out a few years later. And I wrote a couple tunes for that album as well. But Firewalker just always stuck with me. And so when I was gathering songs, I wanted one to be, the tonal center, and something to sort of, be the glue for everything that I was feeling at the time. And so then I reached out and asked George if I could take Firewalker back. And he said yes. And so he was gracious enough to sing and play on the track on the album, which was just a great experience.
It's getting hot out here. Something's going on.
And then it sort of, the rest of the album just sort of fell into place after that. There's a driving theme of strength and independence. But there's also, it's a Mia Borders record, so there's going to be some love songs. There's
Gotta have them love
definitely
songs.
going to be some breakup songs. There's going to be some getting back together songs.
Right. And the term for you basically is the resilience of being able to walk over the fire, and that's the metaphor?
Yeah. I can't be burned by anything that I don't allow to burn me. So.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
good. And you'd worked with George before, right? You told me?
Yeah, he reached out many, many years ago. He wanted some female vocalists and songwriters to collaborate. I did not take him seriously at first because I was like, that's so sweet, George. Oh, you're precious. And then we ran into each other at Mom's Ball actually one year, and he was like, no, I'm very serious. And so then I started going over to his studio and just listening to some of the instrumentals that they were working on, and then putting lyrics on top and bouncing back and forth between home studio stuff. It was fun.
And your new record, who produced that record with you?
I did.
So you did it all yourself?
Just me.
So you have the skills
I do.
to twist the knobs and make it all happen?
Yeah, I was mostly self-taught. I actually started recording music using my film editing software. So
There's
I would.
the film thing coming back at you.
That's film, man. I couldn't afford both Logic and Final Cut, so I went with Final Cut Pro. And so then I would just use my camera as a microphone and then just rip the audio from it and then stack in a film thing. It
Amazing.
was sloppy work.
But you got it done.
But yeah, I was 16,
Wow.
just putting out albums every Christmas as a gift for my family and
Nice.
friends. And they're like, oh, great,
Thank you.
another one. Delightful.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere.
And how often do you like to put records out? Like, what's your cadence of how you? Because a lot of it, some people are album people, some people are EP people, some are single people. They just like dropping. What's your cadence, and what do you recommend for artists out there?
You have to know your audience. My audience is still very much the tactile music listener. They want CDs, they want vinyl, they want something that they can physically hold in their hand. Even if technology is fighting us, I don't have any CD player at this point in my life.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But I knew going into my next project that it was going to be a full album. I put out an EP in 2019 that I actually recorded here at Loyola.
Is that right? In
Delightful,
our fancy studios?
in lovely Studio A. But I knew I had more of a story to tell this time around. I hadn't, put anything out in a while, and so I was due for a full album. When I first started, it was still very much an album market, and so I was putting out a full album every year pretty much. It's just not the market anymore. Even with my audience, you exhaust your pool pretty quickly, and so then it's time to think about the next project. It'll probably be an EP at some point next year. I've dropped a couple of singles here and there, but that's just not my audience. They're not looking for that.
Right.
They're not really heavily invested in streaming just yet. And so you got to go where your crowd is.
And when you do gigs, do you do well on sales of physical products still?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So that's basically where the money is today. Streaming is not that easy to make money.
No, certainly
It's really
not.
about syncing physical product. So
Yeah.
you have to make the physical product and keep that inventory out there and bring it around with you, which is a hassle. But
Yes.
that's where the dollars are.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how everything has changed, but how for me that has remained the same.
Well, like I said, I mean, it's a concept of people. They want what they want, and you got to give it to them. So it's good. You, as a business person, know your audience and don't try to move on from something that's not there.
Yeah.
So, who are some favorite influences of you musically that kind of inspired you to make the music you make, both past and present?
I mean, I'm always stuck in the past. I love Bill Withers. Anybody who knows me knows that I love Bill Withers.
What's not to love?
I mean, he just was effortless in everything that he did. And he also gave me a lot of confidence, one as a songwriter, but also as a rhythm guitarist. I'm not the one that's going to be getting out, standing on top of the speakers and giving you a shredding solo. That's not who I am. But I can hold down the pocket. And I credit Bill Withers with giving me the boost that I needed to do that. And then I grew up listening to big, powerful vocalists: Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, Etta James, Gladys Knight.
So the soul and the blues are really.
Yeah, but also on the other hand, my mother was a huge Paul Simon fan, and so for the first few years of my life, there was a lot of Simon and Garfunkel being played.
Well, that's some real songwriting there.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's why I love an emotionally resonant song. It's really hard for me to write, just a happy-go-lucky, let's all dance type song. Like I'm gonna go for the heartstrings every time.
Right.
And so I think that's definitely where some of that came from. I also grew up listening to 90s hip hop and R&B. So there's a lot of that influence in my music as well. I like to sneak it in every once in a while. I know my audience isn't expecting it. So.
Right. And what's the ideal number for gigs for you to do a year? Like how much touring and local gigs do you think is the right number for you?
I'm a weekend warrior. I don't like to be out on the road for more than a week at a time. It's most often 3 or 4 days. That said, I'm out pretty much every weekend.
Wow. Mostly solo or with band?
Well, it all depends. I started with a band, and then the industry got stingier and stingier. And so then I started getting more comfortable playing solo. And so now at this point, it really depends on the venue, it depends on the money, it depends on the stage, but I can do everything from solo to 10-piece. And I have all of that in my arsenal ready to go.
And I think that's a great reference point that, an artist like this understands the business, knows how to be in the business, and also understands what you have to have. And, whether it's physical goods or being able to do a solo gig to go make that money versus you'd love to play with a big band whenever possible, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But it's not that easy to do. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. So back to the business for a second. Third Coast Entertainment, talk about stuff coming up, because you got something really big that I want you to share, if you can.
Yeah.
About what you got coming up. There's a little game going on in town here in February in New Orleans, a little football game.
There's a sports ball event in February. The Super Bowl is going to be here on February 9th, and Third Coast Entertainment is one of the local suppliers for the NFL for this Super Bowl. And so Third Coast is going to be providing some live entertainment on game day. It's called Game Day Experience. It's an outdoor, there's food, there's drinks, it's everything for ticket holders outside of the Superdome. And so we're going to have some local music lined up.
And is that too late to apply, or has it already been?
It's already set.
It's already set.
The NFL and the city of New Orleans launched this initiative to get local businesses that are are owned by minorities or women or LGBTQ community to just give us a leg up, which is always appreciated. And so it's great.
As it should be.
Yeah, it's great. We met everybody. They gave us a tour of the Superdome after the renovations and stuff. Wow. And that's the part of the business that's really difficult for me, the networking and the handshaking. And it's like, oh, you're a caterer, cool. I've got some events coming up that I might need some catering. And then, oh, you do live music? Oh, me too.
But that's everything, right? But
it's everything.
When you say you're not comfortable with it, it's just not like put yourself forward, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm a very shy, introverted person. People don't believe that, but there is that mental switch that I flip to get on stage.
Right, which you have to have. You can't.
You have to have. You have to be
stage.
able. Yeah, you have to be able to separate what happens on stage from what happens off stage.
Right.
And I think I wasn't 100% confident with that when I was younger gigging. And I think that's why I dealt with so much stage fright, because it was like, oh, this is me. I'm putting up on stage. Are these people going to like me, or are they going to reject me?
Which at its core is such a personal thing.
Yeah.
Like to go up in a tough room where people, like you're opening for somebody, for example,
yeah.
they're not there to see you, and they're like, all right, like, how do you win an audience over? And I think that's such a valuable lesson for people to be a performer and put in those 10,000 hours that you now have.
Yeah.
After playing together. You've been, your first record was 2008, 9? What was it?
Put out an EP in 2007. First LP was 2009.
Right. So you've been at this a couple years now.
Yeah.
And so that performing aspect, to be able to win over a crowd, like, are there any gigs you can remember where you had a super tough crowd and you were able to help turn them into fans of yours? I mean, it's got to be an interesting way. There's a lot of psychology in there, I think, right?
Yeah. I think maybe winning over Janelle Monáe's crowd at House of Blues was a nice win.
Yeah.
Yeah. They weren't there for me. They were there for the spectacle of Janelle Monáe.
Right.
And what we did before that was, adjacent, but not what they were expecting. But we won them over for sure. We sold a fair amount of CDs that night, if I remember correctly. And just, it's so nice to get that boost of confidence from people saying, man, I've never heard of you before, but you're really great. I'm going to start following you now. It's like, that's awesome.
It right there. That's the sentence you're always looking for, right? In
Absolutely. Yeah.
And on the LGBTQ side, audience spread as far as like, do you have a base that comes out of that community? Or is it just a part of it? Is a lot of it? I mean, it's interesting to...
It's always been a very large part of my audience. I joke all the time about how when my first EP came out, it was like a siren song for middle-aged lesbians, and they've just been riding with me ever since.
It's okay.
I love them
Nothing
so
wrong with
much.
that.
We did an impromptu house concert last night. I was supposed to play at a venue, and then a pipe burst. And so then, we had to shut down the night, but there were these group of women that were there to see me, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? And one lived up the street, and I was like,
House concert.
I'll just go play in your driveway. Let's do this.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's about identifying those fans and connecting with them and making sure that they feel as appreciated as I do, just being in this community with them.
Yeah, I worked with Melissa Etheridge years ago when I was at Island, and then I interviewed her for my Janis Joplin documentary I produced, and just couldn't be one of the coolest people ever. And a new film she just is involved with about her going back to a all-female prison in Kansas, where she grew up and had memories of this prison being there, is really fantastic. And
she's great.
It's a heavy film, but it's really a powerful film dealing with incarcerated women. But how Melissa has been this icon for them and help, you talk about difficult times, right? Being in prison is the most difficult time you could probably imagine. And dealing with some of the things that you've done and you can't have to live with. It's a powerful film, but I highly recommend everybody to watch this film. It's brand new. But anyway, she's one of those artists for me that I've always loved her.
Yeah,
and her
she's
songs
always
are just
been
ridiculous.
Yeah, great. When I was, listening to the radio as a kid, there weren't too many out people on the radio. And so Melissa Etheridge and Tracy Chapman was like, okay, there are some of us out there.
Right.
Because visibility, people say it all the time and they think it's trite, or visibility matters, representation matters.
Sure.
You have to be able to see it in order to achieve it. And so to at least have a small amount of people in the industry being out was a huge deal for me when I was coming up.
Sure. And politically, obviously, with the election, didn't go the way a lot of people planned, but for others, it went well for them. But as far as you representing, are you involved politically when you write at all and think about these things in your writing?
Sometimes I am. There's one song, it actually closes out the record. It's called Keep On Doing You. And that's one of the tunes that I sort of had politics in mind in a little bit. Just, especially being a woman of color, the industry, whatever industry you're in, if it's music, if it's politics, people will try and knock you down constantly. Constantly. Oh, you're a woman, you shouldn't be here. Oh, you're a black woman, you definitely shouldn't be here. How could you possibly be qualified enough for this position? That's what we hear constantly. And so every once in a while, I will write a song just to remind myself that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
It's great.
Because we all need that reminder. We all need that validation. Especially right now, I woke up Wednesday morning with a reminder that not everybody in this country cares about me.
I did the math, 17 blue states.
Yeah.
And that would be a lot more red states. It's not good math. And so, yes, you're right. When you live in certain bubbles of New Orleans, or I come from California, and your friends and your similar view the world the same way, and then you realize, oh, we're actually in a minority of people that view the world this way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of frightening. But I think music is that emboldenment, and just it gives people hope, and that's why people come to live shows and they follow you, because you give them that thing. And music is in a way, I would say Avett Brothers, and they have this great spirit to them.
It's healing.
It's healing, and that's the good word. I think as an artist, you have to keep doing what you do, keep bringing it forward. But it's also cool that you're like building this company and booking other people and trying to bring them forward and the next generation, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're not as young as, everybody keeps moving, and that's why I love being around college, because I love finding those next kids and how can I help them get to that next level.
Yeah, I've actually got a current student on my Super Bowl team.
Is that right?
I'm really excited.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
Keep bringing them forward.
You guys are doing it right over here.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, so I mean, anything for you, last words of advice as far as for artists, for people that are like you or not like you, what would you say about trying to move forward in the world, in a difficult world, in a difficult business to make money, and also, like what kind of positive advice can you give people?
Just find your people, find your audience. If you have 1,000 people that just every year will go hard for you. I have a strong contingent of fans that I know will support me financially every year. If you can find those people and maintain strong, emotional, genuine relationships with them, you're going to be fine. If you're sitting there looking at your Spotify numbers saying, why isn't this higher? Why am I not getting put on this playlist? Why? Then you're paying attention to the wrong numbers. You want actual bodies. You want butts in seats.
Sure.
You want email addresses on the list. You want to be able to hold on to those relationships, because followers will fall off as soon as you say something that irritates them.
Right.
They do not care. And streaming is there, you know?
Right.
It's just not what needs to be aggressively pursued. You have to know your audience. You have to know yourself. I'm not running down TikTok followers. I think I've got maybe 30 people on TikTok.
Right.
But, you know, I've got a strong community on Facebook, so I'll engage with them more than I will engage, you know, with my TikTok gang.
Sure. And how do you, once you identified what you call the ride or die fans, how do you super serve them in a way to keep them engaged? Like, what is your process of talking to people? And, you know, because it can't be like, hey, I got a single out now. Hey, I got an album out now. Look at me, right? And we often preach, you know, in marketing that you have to build this relationship with your fans.
Yeah.
And have that conversation online or whatever that would be. What are some of the tricks that you do to kind of keep in touch with people who are those fans out there in the world? And you, like I said, you haven't been to Europe in how long?
At least 10 years, I think.
Right, so like that's a long time. Like, how do you keep in touch with those people and say, hey man, I might be coming, or like, what is it? What does that look like, your engagement level?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm working on every day, and like trying to find new ways to keep people engaged. I've got a Patreon, and I'm starting to, you know, sort of conceptualize new exclusives for them. There's going to be a T-shirt of the month club that they'll have first access to. And then, you know, some of those prints will be available for the general public at miaborders.com. I also have a podcast with my best friend, Kate Duncan, director of the School of Music and Theater Professions. And we engage with our audience that way. There are some people that have really connected with us. And so just, you know, responding to emails, responding to DMs, engaging with people, not just hitting like on every comment that pops up on my Facebook post, but really actively engaging with people, learning a little bit about them, holding on to that information. Oh, how's your wife and kids? You know, like just really being genuine about the relationships.
And where can we find that podcast? Because I want to listen.
It's available wherever you stream podcasts. Go ahead.
What's it called?
It's called Great Question with Mia and Kate.
Okay.
Go ahead and subscribe.
I'd like that.
Please do.
Go ahead and subscribe. Mia Borders is a fantastic New Orleans artist who represents everything great about the way you should play the game. So please follow her, and please follow us. Fridays off.beat, OffBeat Magazine. This is Jonathan McHugh from Loyola University. See you next time.